Hey everyone, this is Quentin Figueroa here with Crowd Freedom, and I'm going to talk to you about voting with democracy versus voting with money. Now, we hear a lot about how democracy is such a great thing and how democracy is representative of the people and that it's a great way to run a society, and it's pretty much the way that we view making decisions in society right now. It's kind of the way we do things. We think democracy is the right way to do things, and if you're not doing things democratically, then you're doing them incorrectly, and that you're not doing them fairly or equally. But I want to kind of talk to you about that and see if democracy really is better than just voting for things directly. If you're just better off just using the free market methods to kind of buy things, and why that might be better or worse. So let's kind of explore that. So one of the first things is we think automatically that we think it's more important to decide what to vote on rather than whether or not the way we vote is correct or the right way to vote. So we're more concerned with, should we have this? Should we vote on this? Let's vote on this. Let's have 50% of the majority decide what this should be, rather than actually just deciding, is having 50% of the majority the right way to do things? We don't really kind of think about whether voting on things democratically is the right way to do it. So let me start out here with the Mises quote, where he has a little bit of something to say on capitalism and the way voting in capitalism works. Ludwig von Mises says, "The capitalist system of production is an economic democracy in which every penny gives a right to vote. The consumers are the sovereign people. The capitalists, the entrepreneurs, and the farmers are the people's mandatories. If they do not obey, if they fail to produce at the lowest possible cost what the consumers are asking for, they lose their office. Their task is service to the consumer. Profit and loss are the instruments by means of which the consumers keep a tight rein on all business activities." So this quote I like because Mises is showing how we already have a voting system in capitalism, in free markets. And that voting system is basically whether or not you choose to support the people who are providing the services that you have. So that stands kind of in contrast to the democratic way, where democratically we all kind of pool our votes together and as a group decide what should happen, where this method of capitalism is kind of a more refined approach where you're just directly going to the business you want and deciding for yourself how to cast your vote. And the people in office are not the politicians, but the actual people, like he said, the farmers, the merchants, the entrepreneurs, these people who actually provide the services, those are the people in the office. And they stay in office only so long as you continue to support them by buying their products. If you stop buying their products, then they're going to go out of business and they're going to no longer be in office. So you have this price mechanism in free markets, which is so valuable to allowing you to determine who stays in office and who doesn't. It allows you to decide which services or choices you have instead of having kind of some other entity or group of people that can choose these for you. So it's showing that it's basically more advanced technology to kind of go the more free market route, where each person votes with their dollars rather than voting with their mouth democratically. And we will explore that as we go on. So we already do pretty much everything in our lives non-democratically. We already do it the free market way because it works. And we don't even stop to think about that because we're just so accustomed to going non-democratically because we need to get things done. For instance, when we plan our day, we plan it for the most part ourselves. We don't go take a vote with other people on how we should plan our day. When we go and buy groceries, we just go and buy what we need and we move on. We don't do it democratically. When we figure out what we want to eat, we do that just straight up. We just figure out what we want and we eat it. When we buy stuff, we buy what we want and we move on. When we fill our car up with gas, when we find new friends, we don't find friends democratically. We find friends that we want. When we find somebody to date or to marry, we do it non-democratically without a group deciding how we should make that decision. So these are all individual things that we are doing non-democratically already, right? When we choose where we want to live, all these things are non-democratic. So the vast majority, pretty much 100% of our lives, anything outside of government is non-democratic. And most things out of government that we do are pretty good in our lives, and we don't have a lot of problems with things we do non-democratically because it works really well. The problem is, we think that when it comes to police or education or government services, that we need to do it democratically. And that's a huge misunderstanding, because it's no different when you're getting a service or making a decision for certain services that right now are done by the government. It's no different to make a decision for that than it is to make a decision for what to have to eat, right? When you choose what to eat, it's just a decision, and you're choosing to buy it at a store, get it from a restaurant or something, and that's not much different than if you were to choose where you want to educate your children or how you want to handle police or something like this. These are all choices and services, and we can decide how we best want to use them, or what we want to buy, or what we want to get. I mean, these are choices that we can make. And why we do it democratically is kind of strange, because it's not the best way to get what we want. Okay, so let's take an example of a Mexican restaurant. So say we're going in to a democratic Mexican restaurant, and we are going to decide what to eat. So since this is democratic, the majority of the people are going to choose what to eat there. So let's say there's 100 people, and you have a choice. You can choose to eat either tacos or enchiladas. Those are the two choices at this restaurant. And so we all take a vote on what the chef's gonna make us. And let's say 55% of the people choose tacos, 45% of the people choose enchiladas. So tacos gets majority of the vote, so tacos it is. So everybody who goes to this democratic Mexican restaurant for dinner, they are going to have tacos because that's what the majority of the people want. And since it's democratic, we think that's good, but it's obviously not good, and you can see why in an example where we have systems that are already non-democratic. We already don't do restaurants democratically, and so it's easy to see kind of how absurd it is. And from this, we can glean a few things though. So by doing it this democratic way in the restaurant, we see that we only have two options to choose from. So right off the bat, no burritos, no chile rellenos, no taquitos, nothing. You just have tacos and enchiladas. Two choices, right? Just kind of like Republicans, Democrats. You know, two choices. You don't have all these other kind of more nuanced options. You're stuck with two choices. And because of this, the owner also doesn't know what people want. So the owner is only serving tacos and enchiladas, but he doesn't know that maybe a lot of people want burritos, like me. But he's not getting that feedback from the market to know that, oh look, people actually want something besides what is on between these two set options that we're giving them. And it's the same thing politically, right? People might want something besides just a Democrat or Republican, but we don't see that in a democratic system where you only really have two choices. And then so also, in this example, 55% of the people want tacos and 45 want the enchiladas. So in this case, 45% of the people do not get what they want. And it's weird because if you were to do this in a non-democratic way, 100% of the people would get what they want. If you were to just come here and let people choose anything they want at the restaurant, then 100% of the people would get what they want. But because you're doing it democratically, 45% of the people are losing out on what they want. And not only that, the other 55% who voted for tacos, they still might be losing out because they just wanted tacos more than enchiladas. But even though they wanted tacos more than enchiladas, doesn't mean they might not have wanted burritos or taquitos or chile rellenos more than tacos. So even that 55% who got tacos still might not be getting exactly what they want either. So you have a lot of people losing out in a democratic system, and that is something to understand, because why would you want a system where people lose when you can have a system where everybody wins? Now, Another question is, why is it that 50%, the majority, gets to decide, that 50% is the deciding amount? Why not 75% of the people? Why doesn't 75% of the people get to choose what to eat? Why isn't it 80% or 90% or 95%? It's weird how we think that democracy should be exactly 50%. It should be majority. So as soon as you have 51% of something, it's the right thing. And even if you go back to America, well, first of all, America wasn't ever a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. And they did it this way because they understood that democracy is majority rule. And that's bad because you have people who are missing out. The whole idea of a republic is to have laws and a constitution that protects everyone and gives everyone their say on what they can or can't have. So when you have this, but in line with that, not everything we do in the America, or in the way the Constitution was written, is not everything's 50%. So we have this weird view of democracy being 50%. Like, if you're using democracy, 50% decide what to do and that's it. But we have certain things in the Constitution where it's 75%. It's like a 3/4 vote, to where it's not just 50%. It's not just majority. It's actually a lot more than majority. And it makes it to where it's much more representative of the group. But even that's kind of stupid, but it's still, why do we do 50%? Why not 75? Why not 90? Why not 100% without democracy? So, and then another thing with this Mexican restaurant example is that people are not going to continue eating there. They're going to go out of business because people are going to be like, I want to get something else than what majority of the people want. I don't want to go to a restaurant and then end up getting not what I want because people don't want that. It's weird. Why can't you just go get what you want to eat? And so that place is going to go out of business, and democracy in the restaurant industry is not going to work. And you don't go out of business in the government because you can't go out of business because the government is a monopoly with all their services. But if it wasn't a monopoly for police or courts or these things, they would go out of business because people would just go with police, courts, educational institutions, healthcare systems, without this democratic monopoly. People would just say, I don't want to go to a school system that forces things to be done this way. I'll just go to this one. And then they would. And that would be the end of this democratic, weird school system. The same way we have such great services with restaurants, where people say, I don't want a democratic restaurant. I want a restaurant that serves what I want to buy. It's my money. Let me choose what I want to eat. So, yeah, we can learn a lot just from a Mexican food restaurant example. And people will say, but that's a restaurant. That's not a police force, or that's not a government. That's not something society that is for society. That's like a business, so it's different somehow than police or courts or education. But it's not different. These are all just services. These are all just people offering things that other people want. And you don't need a government to provide things that people want. So police is just a service. Courts are just a service. Education in schools, it's just a service. It's no different than a restaurant. It's something people need, and it's something people can provide. And the people who need it can decide whether or not they want it to be provided by these other people. Just like with the restaurant, or just like with shoes, or clothing, or houses, or anything. It's all the same thing. It's all business. It's all people choosing what to spend their money on. So police and education and all these things are not outside of the free market. They're not something that only government can do, and they're not something that can only be done via democracy. That totally needs to be understood. Okay, so with democracy, we pool our money together and basically vote for things. And with the free market, we buy things directly. So that's kind of the main difference, is that in democracy, you're not having each individual buy what they want. You're having kind of more the group determine what you want. And the core of what we are as people is not a group. It is an individual. We are individuals. And the most representative thing for an individual is their own individual choice on what they want. When we act in a group, we are not as accurately determining what the individuals want. If a group of 100 people does something democratically by pooling their money together and doing it, it's not representative of each individual. It's representative of the group. And there's going to be people in that group that are more or less in favor of what that group is doing. So why would we create a system where we have a group determining things rather than the individual? It's funny because the whole idea of democracy is to give each person their own vote, right? It's about like equality. It's about giving everybody the right to choose what they want. It's for the people. That's kind of the stuff we hear. And you know, when comparing democracy to slavery, it is a better system. But when you compare democracy to a free market, it's an inferior system. So just because democracy might be better than slavery, that doesn't mean it's the best. There's stuff that's better than democracy, and that is buying things directly. So we need to think about that and understand that. Now, there's 3 benefits you get with the free market way of voting with your money. Now, when you do that, you get exactly what you want, which is pretty freaking cool. You get to spend less money on what you want, and you get higher quality for what you want, right? So these are all really good things. Now, when you go direct, everybody's winning. So when you buy with your money, you're getting exactly what you want, so you're winning. The person that's receiving the money is winning, and it's great. That's what free markets do. It's a free market exchange. Everybody wins when you go direct, when you vote with your money. But now when you vote with your mouth, democratically, not everybody wins, because you're lumping things in a group again, and by doing this, you have people who are on the losing end. And that's why when Republicans and Democrats vote, you always have it to where one time the Republicans will win, and then all the Democrats are going to lose. And then another time, the Democrats are going to win, and the Republicans are going to lose. And they're so in favor of democracy, yet they're so hurt when their team loses. And how could you be upset about your team losing if you're in favor of democracy? That's the democratic system at work. You should be happy when you lose because that's democracy. But they're not happy because they know they want what they want. And democracy is not providing it. So why do you have a system that doesn't provide what you want when you don't need it, when you freaking don't need it? So yeah, paying with taxes is less representative of the people. So democracy is not for the people. Democracy is for the group. And the group can do things that individuals in the group and people in the other group don't want. So it's bad technology. It's outdated. It's antiquated. And it's not something that you should be using. And we do it because I don't fully know why we do it. I think it's because we're probably not smart enough to understand that we can do it without democracy. We've been doing it that way for so long, so we become accustomed to it. So we kind of think that this is the right way to do it. You use democracy to do things. But if we were to ever try not doing it that way for certain things like police or for education, especially education, but we would see that you don't need it. We used to not have government and democracy and this whole voting with your mouth thing for school systems. We didn't have that 100 years ago in America. We did do it the free market way, and people are pretty freaking smart. And now we're doing it democratically, and people coming out of the school system, not quite the brightest people, not the brightest tools, not the brightest group of people there are. So they get confused on certain things. But free market is better technology for this type of things, but we're so accustomed to using democracy that we continue to do it. And of course, the free market makes things better and cheaper because that's how markets work. It's competition, it's incentive, it's all these market forces and the pricing mechanism that drives people to follow what they want to do to create something better. And it allows them the freedom to do that and the opportunity to do that. And it allows people with their money to support the people that do a great job in something. And the people that start to suck at something, they go out of business. And with the government, the people that suck at stuff don't go out of business because it's a monopoly. and because we continue to support it with our mouths, with democracy, rather than with our wallets, with the free market and direct voting with our money. So, yeah. Okay, so, like I've been saying, democracy, it allows people to lie. Because in democracy, you've heard the saying, put your money where your mouth is. And that saying is important because people know that people lie, that people don't put their money where their mouth is. They'll say that, you know, this is something that's good for you, or this is something I would do, or yeah, that's cool, do that. But when it comes to them actually putting their money there to do it, they won't do it because they're lying. They don't want to do, they are not willing to put the money that they work for towards something that they're paying lip service to. And it's obvious that that is what politicians through democracy do. I mean, everybody knows politicians are liars. And it's not even that they're liars, they are using words to kind of push their own interests and whatever. They're using a system that allows them to kind of to twist things, to put incentives in different ways, to not directly allow people to represent themselves. But by allowing people to vote with their money, you're getting rid of the lip service. You're getting rid of this BS. You're just straight up saying, this is what we want, and this is what I don't need to tell you that this is what's good for you because you get to choose, and if I tell you it's good for you, it's like you still don't have to go with it. It's just so much better to do it the non-lip service route, and that is what Mises was talking about in the beginning, and that's why it's so awesome to have capitalism and markets that allow for this. It's way, way better technology, right? So if you have the option of choosing between a car to get from point A to point B, or from choosing a horse and buggy, which one are you going to use? Are you going to use the car or the horse and buggy? I'm going to use the car because it's better technology and it'll get me there quicker and it's better. But some people use the horse and buggy, and that's what democracy is. It's outdated. You know, I'd rather use a computer to take notes and to archive information than a filing cabinet and pen and paper. But if you want to be like the government and use outdated technology, that's what a lot of people are into. But it isn't better technology. It's inferior. And if we support moving civilization forward, you can't support inferior technology. So, like I was saying, well, actually, let's go, okay, so here. Democracy is not for the people, like I've said, right? We see that clearly in the Mexican food example. When you want to choose what to eat, the best representation of the people, right, is letting them choose what they want. So if you want to give power to the people, give them the ability to vote with their freaking money. Don't let them pay lip service to what they want, because a lot of people are going to lose out on all this other stuff that we talked about. So democracy is not for the people. It's not for the people. If you care about people and you want it to be where people have the most freedom, you can't support democracy. It's not for the people. The best way to support the people is to let the people choose what they want individually. That is for the people. Now we hear about democracy being good for poor people. Okay, so in a market system, people who can afford higher quality, they get higher quality. And people who can't afford higher quality, they get lower quality, right? And you get what you pay for, but you earn what you choose to earn. So if you are poor in a free society, you're choosing to be poor. If you're wealthy, you're choosing to be wealthy. Yes, of course there are exceptions, but the exceptions are very, very slim, especially in a free society. Majority of people, even in America, majority of poor people choose to be poor. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but it's true. And a majority of wealthy people in America, they choose to be wealthy. So in a free society, majority of people that are either poor or wealthy, they're choosing to be that. And it's not right or wrong to be one or the other. And the services you get are relative to what you are paying. And if you're wealthier, yeah, you're probably going to have better education. But of course, if you understand how markets work, poor people in a free society are going to have really, 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 really good education relative to rich people in other government societies, because you get way better quality and services in a free market. You're going to have way better efficiency, lower costs, all this kind of thing. So poor people in a free society are going to still be living at a really relatively high standard of living. And again, people who are poor, for the most part, are choosing to be poor, and it's not bad. And the services you get are going to be relative to what you pay. And if you want to get better services, you can easily become wealthy, or you can work towards that. And you're going to get better services if you're wealthier. But what's not okay and what's not fair is to allow people to choose to be poor, and then allow them to force people who choose not to be poor to force those wealthier people to pay for things and to subsidize the decisions that they made. If you want to be fair, let people get what they deserve relative to their decisions. You can't force wealthy people to pay for the decisions of poor people when both groups of people chose where they want to end up. And wealthy people at some point might become poor, and poor people at some point might become wealthy. It all varies, but you can't force groups of people to take care of other groups of people. And again, wealthy people in a free society are going to take care of people with charity anyway. It's like poor people is the least of the concerns for a free society. Poor people are going to be taken care of, and they already are in non-free societies. It's just charity is going to be better in a free society, and on and on. But the point is that poor people are still represented in a free market system, and wealthy people are very represented in a free market system, because they don't get to have poor people use their mouth to force them to do things that are oftentimes inferior. I mean, I think a lot of people understand how poor people are totally exploited right now by different parties in America who use them to kind of bring about socialistic policies and bring in things that decrease freedom and increase servitude and all these things, and they're kind of not quite bright enough to understand that that's what's going on, so they continue to promote it, and it gets kind of worse and snowballs. And I think people kind of who watch these videos get that, and this whole unequal, inhumane thing is not possible through a voting with your money system. It removes that. It is more accurate and representative of the people. And if you really want to represent the people, rather than have this distortion of poor people or people that are less educated hurting those who choose not to be, then that's what I'm talking about. So, like I said, relative to slavery, democracy is better. So we kind of came out of more of a oligarchy type framework where you had monarchs ruling and this type of thing, and so we say democracy is way better. And yeah, it probably is better to a degree than this stuff. That can be argued, but it is like decent. It's not slavery. It's better than slavery. But just because something's better than slavery doesn't mean it's the best thing or that it can't be better. And the thing better than democracy is what democracy tries to be. Democracy talks about being for the people, being representative of the people. If you want 100% representation and you want to be absolutely for the people, then you would go the free market voting with your money route, because that is 100% representation of the people rather than a majority representation. Which one's better? And it's just like in grade school. It's just because second grade is better than first grade doesn't mean you stop at second grade, right? So if democracy is second grade, that's still not that good. You can go a lot higher and do it a lot better. So let's do it a lot better. Let's kind of move up the ladder, if you will. So yeah, like I was saying, an example would be schools with how we do it right now democratically. Schools right now are paid via taxes through property taxes for the most part in each city. And where you live, your property taxes go to the schools that you have. And it's interesting because if you right now don't have children and you live in anywhere, you pay property taxes for school. So you are already in America, and I'm sure freaking most societies, you pay for education even if you don't use it. So that's not representative of you. You are paying for something you're not using. And the people that use schools, they pay for it. But the people that don't use schools, which is a lot of people, because people that don't have children, people that are older, whatever, they're paying for schools when they don't need them. Why don't you let people pay for what they want? And then the people that do pay for the schools, they get one type of school. Why do we not allow for options in schooling? And you'll say that we have charter schools or homeschooling or these kind of things, but you still have to do it you still have to go talk to Big Brother and make sure you're following the right regulations and all this crap. You can't just say, I don't want to have my kids go to school. What if you don't want to pay for it? What if you say, you know what, I'm going to educate my kids just by having them work at a job. They're going to get the education there. I'm not going to pay for school. I'm going to save the money and do something else with it. You can't do that right now. And that's a choice that people should have. And that's a representation of somebody by doing that. So why would you not want to allow people to represent their vote by not doing that? But in a free society where you vote with your money, you can. You don't have to pay for a school, and you're not going to be forced to pay for a school. So it's clear that the democratic way of doing things is taking away those decisions and that kind of thing, and it's worse than letting people just buy what they want to buy. If you want to send your kid to a religious school, right now that's kind of a problem. People get pretty upset about it, because schools right now have to be kind of like a one-size-fits-all. So they're kind of secular and they're kind of just flat, and they get to where you can't have a opinion on anything. You can't kind of create a boundary anywhere. You have to group it all together in one big hodgepodge of absurdity. So if somebody in a free society wanted to vote for a school with their money for a Christian school, they could. If they wanted to go to a school that doesn't teach God, that's secular, they could do that. If they didn't want to send their kid to school at all, they could do that. If they wanted to have their kid learn by working at a job somewhere, they could do that, and all these other creative options. If they wanted him to only learn online, they could. If they wanted whatever. You have infinite options in a free society, and through competition and innovation and allowing people to actually create better schools, you're going to have some really awesome educational options. And that is all thanks to people voting with their money rather than voting with democracy. Now, in line with this, democracy violates the non-aggression principle. So that is one of the biggest problems of democracy. So the whole point of a free society is property. And in order to have property, you can't have that property stolen. You can't have it aggressed against. You can't have these kind of things. You need to have non-aggression. So as soon as you're initiating force on somebody, that's kind of a problem. And with democracy, that's the modus operandi. That's what you do with democracy. You're always using force to make people do things. I mean, so for instance, with school, if you don't want to go to a school right now in America, you don't want to send your kids there. I actually don't know the exact things that would happen, but I would imagine it's the type of thing where you're going to get a notice, you're going to get told that your kids need to go to school, they're going to start fining you probably, they're going to, have certain things come at you that you need to, now go through a legal system to kind of figure out what's going on. And if you keep kind of not doing this, you're probably going to lose your kids or something like that, so you're going to have force happen by you not going with democracy. So that's just a school example. I mean, but it's anything. If you choose, you can't choose what you want to have in a democracy. You have to go with the group. And if you don't go with the group, you're going to get force used on you. And of course, the biggest example is taxation itself. So taxation is theft. Now, everything we pay for right now with the government is through taxes for the most part. And taxation is something that we choose what to tax and where money goes. We choose that democratically. And with democracy, as we've been talking about, some people win, some people lose. So some people are going to be happy with where those tax dollars go, but some people are not going to be happy. And the people who aren't happy are still forced to pay those taxes. And that is violating the non-aggression principle, and that is theft. It's violent behavior. It's violence. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about when I say democracy is inferior. It's outdated technology, and free markets are more civilized because they are not using violence. I mean, violence is kind of barbaric. I don't know about you, but using force on other people is not the brightest thing to do. Violence doesn't solve problems, and that's why we have so many freaking problems with democracy, because we're using violence every day, everywhere. It's absurd. Our whole government is run through violence, through taxation, through theft, through people getting forced to do things they don't want to do. It's weird. So you are using violence, and you're violating the non-aggression principle through democracy, and that's not a good thing in my view. And I know lots of people have ways to justify it, and there's lots of arguments, but I'm giving you the counter kind of argument or take on things, and just let it sink in. Just think about it, because there's tons of ways to justify that. Well, everybody agrees to tax it, so it's okay, and it's blah blah blah, but not everybody agrees to it. You're hurting people, and violence isn't the best way to do things. Things are more expensive through democracy. You have politicians lying through democracy, all these problems, so democracy really not that great. And like I have said, America is not a democracy, it's a constitutional republic. I know they try to trick people, and they have tricked people into thinking that it's a democracy, and at this point it pretty much is a democracy, and that's pretty sad, because the framers of the Constitution weren't idiots, and they knew that democracy wasn't the best way to do things, and that's why they made it not that way. And let's hope in the future we can do things non-democratically like the framers of the Constitution, who weren't idiots. Okay, and like I have said, people act closer to what they want individually than as a group. Democracy is basically a collectivist group, and we as individuals are not a group. We are individuals. And if you want to get closest to representation of people, you go to the most simplified part of what a person is, and that's them as an individual, not them as a group. So democracy is representing a group and not an individual, which is not the best way to do it. You want to represent the individual, not the group. And as we have seen or talked about, places that are democratic are where we have the biggest problems. We have problems with police. Frick, right now there's tons of stuff going on about race relations and things like that with police. And if you had this being done without a democracy or without a state, you would have choices and the ability to hold different systems accountable, and you wouldn't have to support people if you didn't want to, and it'd just be a lot better. That's why places where we have democracy are where we have the biggest problems. We don't have problems with your mobile phones. Mobile phones are freaking awesome because it's not democratic. Our clothing totally does what we need it to do. No issues buying clothes, getting decent prices, because it's non-democratic. We don't have problems with any, 99% of our lives, because we're not doing it democratically. The places that we are doing democratic things, like police, like courts, like education, healthcare, even charity and welfare. These things are a mess because they are done through democracy, and they're using violence to do so because democracy is violent. So that is a problem. And there's not that many places where we have free markets. But to the degree that you see free markets happening, like early America, you see a lot of prosperity, and you see things being done much better. You see less problems. And it's pretty straightforward if you think about it. And one final thing. So people get kind of upset about money because they think money is like a greed thing, or like why do things with money? But money is representation of us. Money is a medium of exchange. I don't want to get into it, but money is basically representative of our time, our labor, our creativity. When we make money, we make it by going out and working and doing something. Like if we go and dig a ditch and get paid for it, that money is representative of our digging that ditch. And when we buy something now with the money that we got from digging that ditch, we are basically saying, I'm willing to dig this ditch in order to have this. And that's not a bad thing. That's you working to create something, to help something, to service something, to get something else. Money is just that medium in between all these things we do. It's stored energy. So when we do things to create money, we are storing energy, we are representing we are representing those things with money. And then when we spend that money, we are basically saying, I spent time doing those things to make that money, and I feel okay spending that time to now get this by spending my time doing it. So the money is kind of that energy in between things. It's the medium of exchange that's in between these things that we trade for and that we, exchange for. And that is highly, highly, highly representative of what people want versus what people say they want, which is democracy. And I think I've somewhat drilled that point home in this video, and that was the point I wanted to make, and that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an understanding of this topic, because I think it's a really important thing to think about when we talk about a free society, because people are so caught up on democracy that they fail to see of a better way to do things than democracy. They say they want democracy to represent the people, and if there's a better way to represent the people, then we no longer need democracy. Democracy is outdated technology. We got something better. We can throw away the old Windows 3.1 and we can bring in Windows 10. We can do the update. We don't need to use DOS anymore. We can have a full-blown, colorful operating system with a free market. So let's go out and do that. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. Please comment if you disagree or agree, but preferably disagree. And please like the video if you like it, and dislike it if you don't. But if you dislike it, please comment and tell me why you dislike it. And if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe, and please go to the website Crowd Freedom if you have any questions. Any free market questions you have, I'll make a video on, and we will talk about it and address it. I just want to create a community where we talk about these things and we work towards building a free society. That's my whole thing. I want to build a free society. I want to the same way we deploy servers with Linux and that kind of thing, the same way we deploy servers in like a business environment, I want to deploy freaking societies in a world environment. Let's deploy cities. Let's deploy things, and let's actually experiment with cities. Let's actually build cities. Let's do it. So thank you for watching, everyone, and have a very great day.